In my last Studio McGee Dupes video, we kind of focused on some of the bigger pieces and how you can save a lot of money. But for today's video, I thought it would be more fun to kind of tackle those smaller scale pieces, because finding the pieces is only half the battle. It's how you style them that makes the impact. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. First up, we're going to talk about how to style our kitchen with our thrifted finds. So when I'm looking at inspiration, I'm looking for a common theme. And one theme across the board that I always love is the amount of vintage copper that is incorporated. For example, I found this really beautiful combination of a planter and vase for just $8 total. Would have been over $50 had I purchased from World Market. And then I also found this really sweet little olive tree from Aldi's, weirdly enough, decided to place it in the pot. A vignette similar to this from McGee & Co. would cost a small fortune, but because I thrifted it, it was so affordable. Another thing I'm paying attention to are the colors that they're using. And I've been loving this kind of reddish brown color for fall, and I think will transition well into even Christmas time. But you can oftentimes find exactly what you're looking for if you just do a little bit of digging. So I found this beautiful ribbed pitcher at the Goodwill outlet for less than $1, and I think it looks perfect standing alone, or could obviously be filled with florals. Another thing to pay attention to are the shapes that they're using. So if I love the little pottery with the little handles from the Studio McGee line at Target, then that's what I'm gonna look for at the Goodwill bins as well. Pieces like this are great because they're so versatile. You can fill them with utensils or florals, or even leave them empty, as I did with the pitcher. Another thing I like to pay attention to are the types of florals they're using. So Studio McGee uses a lot of hydrangeas, especially in the spring and summer months. So I found those hydrangeas at the bins for just pennies on the dollar. And one thing I like to do just to make them feel a little bit more realistic is to actually just take some of the leaves from my own real hydrangeas in my garden and place the faux inside. So it just gives an overall more realistic appearance because some of it is actually real. No kitchen for me is complete without a candle, so I found this one from the Hearth and Hand line for just $2, and what's great about this is after it burns down, I can use it as a tea light candle like Studio McGee shows here. Some of you might remember when I made these wall hooks out of Dollar Tree materials, so if you haven't seen that video, I can link it down in the description box for a more detailed tutorial, but I'm always looking for items to hang from those hooks in my kitchen, so I found this gravy boat, which would be perfect for Thanksgiving, but for now we're using it to fill the dog bowl. And I also found this basket, decided to fill it with apples. It's perfect for fall. It's bringing in that reddish color from the picture. Everything you see here has either been DIY'd or thrifted, and I still think it looks so beautiful for the fall season. Moving along into open shelving. How do we style our bookshelves? So one thing I like to do is come up with my color palette first. So then that way I can go out and I know exactly what I need to buy because it fits my color palette. So for example, I found this frame from the thrift store, decided to frame this gift bag here, and that is going to be the color palette. So before I go to any other thrift store, I like to go to the Goodwill bins, or some of you might call it the Goodwill outlet, because everything is priced by the pound. And how it works is basically at the top of every hour, they refresh the bins. So there's always new stuff coming in, but there's tons of home decor that is so beautiful that you can incorporate in your space. And I think a lot of people think the Goodwill bins is just for small things, but I have found large scale trees, I have found large scale artwork at the bins. I think it's just a matter of when you go and seeing kind of what they have. If you want to see what I do to this tree, make sure you are subscribed so you can see that transformation next week. So what kind of decor am I looking for at the bins for my shelf styling? So I'm looking for books in that color palette, faux florals in that color palette, vases, candles, candle holders, beautiful trays in all different shapes and materials. Also, I do like incorporating decorative objects because I think it breaks up some uniformity. Baskets are great for storage, so are boxes in, again, different materials and sizes, frames, and of course, seasonal decor. When you're all finished, you go up and get everything weighed, but you can save a significant amount of money by shopping the bins first. So now I'm back home. We have shopped for the color palette that I would like to use for my built-ins. The next thing I like to do personally is I like to place the items that have to go in a specific spot. So for example, this light. The reason I have to put it here is because I can more easily disguise the cord behind the curtains. So if I were to put it over here, let's say, you would see a big cord kind of running through and I'd have to get like really creative to hide it. So this is just the best option for placement in terms of where this light is gonna go. The other sort of unsightly thing that I want to cover are these these light switches that we never use for the recessed lighting. If I'm trying to hide a switch, is just simply put a bigger picture in front of it. So I have this picture here. It's pretty plain, but it is the right kind of scale that I want for this space. Another thing that I think is kind of a cool idea is to layer artwork. Next up, I want to add an element that is eye demanding. So florals are actually one of the most eye demanding things that you can add to your bookshelf. So these are a mixture of faux and dried. So I just decided to put this here. It's bringing in that same color palette as the picture, as the pillow. But as you can see, everything is kind of at a different height, but really tall. So now it's time to bring in some flat pieces. This space here is basically like a no-brainer for a stack of a few books or a stack of lower profile boxes. And because we have a lot of color happening here, I want to keep this kind of minimal. Our little bins ruffled bowl here, just to kind of tie in the white here. Again, keeping this side all really neutral. We're having something tall, something a little bit shorter, kind of in the middle. Again, something tall, a little bit shorter. But then I feel like there's a big spot here that could benefit from a piece of decor. So because I have a lot of black metal in my space, I have this little picture here. So when I'm styling multiple shelves, so now we're gonna work on the next shelf. I like to get one shelf completely done. Even if I end up moving some of these pieces over, it's a good jumping off point that I can move on to the next one. Because I have the pictures here, I'm going to shoot a picture up here, so that way it is kind of balanced. This picture up here, I'm gonna pop it up right here. The next thing I want to pay attention to is above the light, above this light here, I want to make sure whatever I put above it is chunkier and not so slender, because you don't want something that's like the same shape right above it. I wouldn't put like a tapered candle above this because it's too linear. So instead, I'm going to put a kind of chunkier style of a vase, and I have one that has pattern. So again, we're working in that opposite direction. You guys might remember this guy. Because I have my books kind of flat on this side, I'm gonna want them to go kind of straight up and kind of be flanked with bookends on either side. So now we have this kind of empty gap here. So because I used black metal here, I wanna put something here that is the same material. When you're styling things, make sure that you're not just putting things like all on the same plane. You wanna style kind of like dimensionally. So like push things back, move things in front of other things to give it just a little bit more depth and variation. It'll make your shelves look way more interesting. So that's kind of how it's turning out so far, but I'm really wanting to have some of that like cranberry color over on this side, and whatever it is gonna be has to be pretty small. So I found this cranberry pumpkin here. We need to glue the stem down. Kind of feel like it should go somewhere in this general area. Pop over to the other side and show you guys kind of what I did using the same kind of system, but just pointing out a few things. So for this lamp, you guys remember this DIY, this lamp can't go in that corner, or rather the other light can't go here, because then I would see a cord running all along here and I don't wanna see that. So using battery operated or chargeable lights is the most ideal thing. And because this light is quite large, I wanted something here that was going to be smaller, that would incorporate a lot of the same colors and materials as on the other side. So I thrifted this in the bins as well as this, but I just swapped the florals out to something that felt a little bit more whimsical and fall-like. In place of this glass tray, I could also choose to use books, but you just want to, again, make sure that everything is kind of hitting at different points. And because I have this kind of cranberry color here, I want to make sure again that it's opposite. So I placed this cranberry vase over on this side. Because this is quite large, again, I want to make sure that whatever is going to go in this spot is also going to be quite large to again create balance. They say it's almost like you want to make a zigzag or like an S formation when you're styling shelves to create a lot of balance. And that's really how I like to style my built-ins. It's kind of the process that I go through. I come up with the color palette, I clear it off, I put my fixed pieces in, I put my things that I want to disguise, and then I kind of layer in all of these other pieces. Now, some people will use a lot more books, or some people will use like only sculptures. I like to have a mix personally, but again, everyone styles shelves totally different. It's just a matter of if you want to switch it up, here are a few friendly suggestions. And last but not least is the front porch. And I'm actually going to do this makeover for my sister because her front porch just needed a little bit of TLC, but it doesn't have to cost a fortune. So whenever you're styling anything, you want to, again, look for inspiration. So Studio McGee does such a nice job. They give you so many nice options and so much education. She does not gatekeep at all. She gives you all the secrets. And what she has said in the past, and I might be paraphrasing, is it doesn't matter your budget or how big your house is, everybody has a front door. So even if it's just a wreath and a doormat. So when it comes to the wreath, you guys might remember this olive wreath that I DIY'd, and my sister just requested very neutral, so I thought this would be perfect. And in fact, something similar like this can cost upwards around $50 at even places like Target. So we've got our wreath. The next thing I look for are large scale planters and baskets. So when I found this basket for just $4, I decided to take it to a local shop near me and just test it out with some florals to see how that was looking. The white mums looked perfect in there. So if you're going for a more traditional fall color scheme like I am, Aldi's has the cheapest pumpkins that are large in scale that I've seen. But if you want neutral and you're in the Northeast Ohio area, you should try checking out Pizzutis because they have a lot of really great pumpkin options that are in that beautiful kind of modern neutral aesthetic. So we are gonna start off by just cleaning everything off with a broom and then hosing down the front so it's nice and fresh. If you have a glass front door like my sister has, I recommend getting these command strips that have hooks on them so that way your wreath isn't like smushed in between both of those doors. Next up is the doormat. I actually found this one at a discount store for just $7. Obviously, you just want to pull the weeds. Make sure that your space is totally cleaned off before you start adding things on top of it. So I found this planter at Lowe's for 40% off, so it was just $13, and decided to add some mums to it as well, just to tie everything in together. If your covered area is quite small, I recommend kind of decorating outside of it. It's gonna make that area just appear much larger instead of just cramming everything right by the door. As a reminder, this is how the front porch was looking before and then now after. With all of these additions, I spent $50 with the wreath and the doormat, the planter basket, the planter, and all of the pumpkins, which I think is a pretty good price point, especially if you're after that neutral aesthetic that is so trendy right now. And that about wraps it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments which find was your favorite, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye for now.